In this book, PHARMA, there are 300 pages of references. So this is an awfully thick book. A third of it is the references, the resources. These are scientific findings. This isn't Gerald Posner's opinion here. You mentioned the word syndrome, and immediately what comes to mind, and I'm always trying to find terms that people can relate to, or kind of put it in layman's terms that they go, oh, I think I'm familiar with that. I know more about it than I would have thought when you asked the question. What was Gulf War syndrome?
Yeah, so it's fantastic. Listen to this: Gulf War syndrome, exposure to all types of chemicals that we, the United States military, are using, as a matter of fact, throughout the Gulf War, just like the syndrome that came back from the Vietnam War from the use of napalm, which was a firebombing element that came back with soldiers who had lung and breathing problems, the equivalent of COVID for a decade to come. The very elements used in the process of war causes then physical symptoms that carry over and have to be treated by doctors and a new group of pharmaceutical products, even to the extent of not even Gulf War syndrome, but think of what today is an accepted element of fighters coming back from a war and even first responders, PTSD,
Yeah.
post traumatic stress syndrome. By the way, that just as Gulf War syndrome cannot be treated or paid for by insurance until it's a recognized medical illness. So what has to happen is pharma needs a collaborator. The collaborator is the oleopathic doctors, the doctors who make these diseases. So they need the psychiatric manual, the DSM in 1980, to call PTSD a disease. Then they can prescribe for it with antidepressants and mild tranquilizers, and you can have insurance covered. They need to have Gulf War syndrome actually medicalized so the Veterans Administration understands it's an illness, and then it can be paid for by insurance, and the drug companies can produce drugs for it. So there's a process in here in which we sometimes create the illnesses, and then we medicalize them, and then we treat them for big money.
Right. And with the U.S. veterans committing suicide at a rate of about 22 veterans per day, it's unfortunate. And I would say that they could definitely do a better job taking care of the people that gave us our freedoms. But that is the ultimate question, right? Freedom. Because what I see coming down the chute with COVID is what's known as mandatory medicine. So if I were to give you my recap in soundbite, we've got an inoculation, a vaccine that's being rushed at record speed, record time. So we are sacrificing safety in an effort for speed. And in the speed, they are also having this synonymous conversation that you will lose freedoms, a very important word to all of us. And the freedoms you might lose is if you don't get this mandatory, government induced mandatory vaccine. Am I close on that?
Yeah, no, I think what will happen it's going to become a weighing game. The weighing game is going to be individual liberties and freedoms versus the public health, the health of the community as a whole. So that's the hammer that will be used by public health officials in the government. They'll say, yes, you're entitled to individual freedoms, but you're not entitled to make somebody else sick. And therefore, you'll say, but I'm fine. I'm healthy. I just went and got a COVID test. I'm negative. Just went to get a serologic test, and I don't have any antibodies. I haven't been exposed. I'm okay. And they'll say, well, but maybe you'll be exposed tomorrow and you'll be an asymptomatic carrier. And you're going to go past someone who's working for the fire department or is working at a hospital, and they're going to be 55 years old and you don't know they're pre-diabetes. You're going to infect them and they're going to get really, really sick as a result of your selfishness. And not just because you're not standing 6 feet away and you're not wearing a mask, but let's make it easy for you and for them and everybody else. Just go down the street and get that shot of the new vaccine that was just put out. So that's going to be the way they're going to present it. And they're going to say to you, you're trying to say, I want to be free. What you're really saying is, I want to be selfish. And therefore, we're telling you as the government, we know better than what you know.
Right. And there are so many people that I see this as a slippery slope where they're just saying, well, that must be it. They must know better than me. And they refuse to think for themselves. And I want to highlight these facts and go past this prologue.